morning, everybody. How are you doing today? I'm Debbie. Welcome to my channel. I apologize. I accidentally set the Walsh trial for 8 a.m. I fixed it. You guys are supposed to be here at 8 a.m., not the Brian Walsh trial at 8 a.m. That's at 10. I'm so sorry for the confusion. That was my bad. Is the mic better today? I cranked it up as high as it would go. I've even recorded myself to see if I was loud enough. If it's still not loud enough, I will switch to a different microphone. Nobody's talking to me. Hello, wake up, people. Hey, Jennifer. Hey, Wiggles. Hey, Judy. Hey, Tricia. Hey, Jennifer. I love you too, Wiggles. Is it better? I just don't like the sound quality of the other microphones, but I want you to be able to hear me too. So that's my conundrum right now. And then Travis just said, well, maybe Santa Claus will bring you a new mic. So let's see. Did Judy give us trivia today? Of course she did. In July 2007, Bardo was eked 11 times on his way to breakfast in the maximum security unit at Mule Creek State Prison in Amador County, California. Maximum security, yet he was eked 11 times. Yeah. That's great security there, people. 2 inmate-made ekers. Shivs, isn't that what they're called? When they're inmate-made, don't they call them shivs? Were found at the scene. So more than one person then did this, if there's 2 of them. He was treated at UC Medical Center and returned to prison. The suspect in the attack was another convict, serving life for second-degree red rum. No, it was only one person? Why do you need 2? Was he afraid one would break or something and he needed 2 just in case? What was the reason? Just because he was creepy and he didn't like him, or was it revenge for something? Oh. Okay. One for each hand. I guess. Yeah. How does that even happen? Like, I don't get. Like, these people are watched, right? This is why we put them where they are. They're watched. They're there because they're not safe. Well, for one, we put them there for punishment, but we also put them there to keep the public safe. I say we like I have a part of it, but you guys know what I mean. They're put there for the safety of the public. Yet they can get a hold of drugs, they can get a hold of alcohol, weapons. They can escape, and they're maximum security prisons. How did things like this happen? It's like Jeffrey Dahmer was killed in prison. How do these things happen? Do they need more guards in these places? Like, how does this happen? I'm so weirded out when, Ada K, you guys know Ada K. She comes in the chat sometimes. She has her own channel. And her husband, ex-husband now, but she won't tell us why, but her husband went to prison for something. She had no idea he'd done anything. And like I said, she won't tell us why, but it was a surprise to her. But she has stories about the things that they get away with. And it's bizarre, the things they do to get away with things. And do you remember we started watching that one trial? Dang, I forgot her name. The chick that got pregnant in jail when she was waiting for her murder trial. The way that they got his stuff to her. Ada K had told us about that. Not that specific contraband, but other types of contraband, how they did that, how they put it through like the pipes and the plumbing and stuff to get stuff to other inmates. So I already knew they did that, but I didn't know they actually would transport. I don't want to say that word. The stuff that makes babies. Oh my God, no! How does that happen? Yeah, stuff. And they both start with S. How does a drone fly over a prison? That's crazy. Was it a maximum security prison? That's crazy. That's the whole reason why these people are put there. So they can't. No, we're just talking about contraband in prison. There was a woman, we started to watch her trial. Dang, I don't remember her name. It was when we were doing Brooks and it was a live trial, but everybody was so into Brooks that we decided not to watch her live trial. We ended up watching Brooks. When she was in jail waiting for her trial, she got pregnant. One of the male inmates in the jail. Yeah, the trial itself was boring. I thought it was going to be exciting because of what happened when she was in jail waiting for the trial. Some male inmate she had fallen in love. And I forgot, did he get a hold of a rubber glove or something and put his stuff in it, and she had got one of those yeast infection applicators, and he sent it through like the plumbing or something, and she got to her cell, and yeah. Yeah, so She got pregnant. So, yeah, we were just talking about how things happen in prison and jail that should not happen. Like, that's the reason they're locked up. Oh my God. I have so many questions. Cooked? Because where are they going to cook it? And then it would be cold. Who eats T-bone steaks cold? What? What the heck? And Ada K said another thing that was, this is gross. They can also talk to each other through the toilet. How are they going to cook it? Love you. Have a good day, sweetheart. How are they going to cook it? Oh my God. So Ada K says that they do somehow, they flush the toilet where the water doesn't come back. I don't know. Chat says bye. The chat says bye. He said bye. And so they put their face in the toilet and talk to each other through the pipes. So she said you can tell who does that because they'll have like acne around from the bacteria. Okay, enough of that. Enough of that. Okay, so now we have days and days and days of Dr. Park Dietz, who, yeah, that's disgusting. I don't think I would ever want to talk to someone that bad. Yeah. That's disgusting. Judy, where did we see Dietz? That was Spectre? I know we've seen him before.
Your profession for the record?
I'm a physician specializing in psychiatry, and my practice is limited to forensic psychiatry.
Would you please describe your education and training?
I received a bachelor's degree in psychology and biology from Cornell University in Ithaca, New York in 1970. In 1975, I received a Doctor of Medicine degree from the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine in Baltimore. In that same year, I received a Master of Public Health degree also from Johns Hopkins, and had completed coursework toward a PhD in sociology that was granted much later when I wrote a dissertation, I think in 1984.
Perhaps we could stipulate, I know the court is in possession of this witness's curriculum vitae, and I would be happy to stipulate.
One more current than the other. If you want to stipulate, fine, but it's up to Mr. Galindo. Perhaps some skeletal outline of his credentials might be.
I would prefer that the record be complete. And that
Let's make it complete, but
he is giving just a brief overview of his many qualifications, Your Honor.
I do not have the updated curriculum vitae.
I provided that to you yesterday.
No.
Would the court, does the court want to take a recess so that Ms. Clark can be furnished an additional copy?
What I would like you to do is put on exactly what you indicated you were going to put on, and then if there's any problem with the vita before cross-examination, she can certainly have my copy.
Fine, thank you. I believe you were indicating to the court your education and training?
In 1975, I became an assistant resident in psychiatry at the Johns Hopkins Hospital and served in that position for 2 years, and then became resident and chief fellow in forensic psychiatry at the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania under Dr. Robert Sadoff. After some years passed, as I mentioned, I received the other doctorate as well.
What positions have you held, Dr. Dietz?
My first position after residency was as an assistant professor of psychiatry at the Harvard Medical School, where I had been asked to see if I could make the Bridgewater State Hospital for the Criminally Insane, which was a maximum security hospital, into a Harvard teaching hospital. This was not a successful mission, though for 2 years I did direct the forensic psychiatry service there and spent the bulk of my time conducting evaluations of the criminal responsibility of mentally disordered offenders. I was responsible at that time for about 500 evaluations a year for the criminal courts of Massachusetts. Then my third year at Harvard, I spent the entire year working on the case of the United States versus John Hinckley, where my task was to lead the government team that evaluated Mr. Hinckley on behalf of the U.S. Attorney's Office. I did some research during the year, but that was my sole practice for the year. And then I spent an additional year at Harvard doing research on violent mentally disordered offenders. After that, I accepted a position at the University of Virginia, which had asked me to become the medical director of their Institute for Law, Psychiatry, and Public Policy, which is run by the University of Virginia Medical School, Law School, and the Commonwealth's Department of Mental Health. And I accepted that position and initially was an associate professor of law and associate professor of behavioral medicine and psychiatry in the medical school. I spent my time half-time in the law school, half-time in the medical school, and was eventually promoted to professor of law and professor.
Wait a minute. Does he have a law degree too? Or is he a professor of, because I know, in nursing, we're taught, nurses' notes and, the forms we fill out and that they're legal documents. So is he teaching, medical law? Or does he have a law degree too? I don't remember him saying he had a law degree when he was talking about his credentials. That's weird. I mean, I guess it's possible, but there is a little bit of, not a lot. I know maybe doctors more, but they probably have to take malpractice classes and stuff like that. But we learn that the documents that we fill out are legal documents and you can't cover up what you've written. You have to just draw a line through it because it still has to be legible even if you make a mistake and stuff like that. And that we might have to testify in court if something. No law degree. Okay, then why is he teaching at a law school? That's weird. That is weird. There is a name for that. That's a mental disorder where you pick. I can't remember what it's called. Excoriation syndrome or something like that. And it's a stress thing. So it makes sense he would be sitting there picking at his lips. I think his dad mentioned it when his dad was on the stand. That is bizarre that he's teaching in a law school. Unless, like I said, unless he's allowed to teach legal stuff related to medical stuff?
Behavioral medicine and psychiatry. While I was there, I taught courses in legal medical subjects at the law school, courses on criminal violence, psychiatry, and criminal law. And in
Debbie, keep listening.
the medical school, directed the fellowship program to train young psychiatrists in the subspecialty of forensic psychiatry. I had run a similar training program at Harvard as well.
Thank you,
And
Wiggles.
at the institute, we had a forensic psychiatry clinic that conducted about 75 evaluations a year. The criminal evaluations were primarily on behalf of the defense, whereas in Massachusetts, the work was primarily court-appointed. And the clinic conducted these evaluations with an interdisciplinary team and always had law students and health sciences students of various disciplines attending the evaluations. After having done that and the ordinary scholarship and research activities that one is expected to do in such a position, I took a sabbatical and moved to California for the year and gave notice to the dean that I did not intend to return, and entered private practice in Southern California. I'm based in Newport Beach and serve several roles while I'm there. I teach part-time at UCLA, where I'm clinical professor of psychiatry and biobehavioral sciences. I'm a consultant to the FBI through their National Center for the Analysis of Violent Crime in Quantico, Virginia, at the FBI Academy. That's a relationship begun in the early 1980s. I serve as the forensic psychiatrist for the New York State Police, based at the division headquarters in Albany, New York. I spend most of my time consulting on criminal and civil cases around the country, consulting to law enforcement agencies, prosecutors, private practicing attorneys, insurance companies. I also spend a portion of my time as the principal of a small company known as the Threat Assessment Group, which works on behalf of industry and public figures and other persons who have security problems from those who are behaving abnormally. And I continue to write and to conduct research.
That is how you occupy your time currently?
Yes.
Okay. Are you a member of any professional associations?
I am.
Would you state those for the record?
Well, there have been quite a few over the years, but there are three in which I've been primarily active. And those are the American Psychiatric Association, in which I am a fellow, which requires meeting certain criteria, being elected to the position. I've chaired a committee on the misuse and abuse of psychiatry in the United States. I've served on some other components of the APA. In the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, I chaired the psychiatry section for 3 terms and was on the executive council for the organization as a whole for a term of 3 years, and have over the years been very active in presenting papers and giving lectures before the Academy. In the American Academy of Forensic Science, in the American Academy of Psychiatry and the Law, I've been very active since medical school and have served in most of the offices of the Academy. I serve in the office of counselor on the Executive Council right now. I've chaired many of the committees and served on most of the committees, and have presented many papers over the years and been active in the publication of the Journal of the Academy.
Have you engaged in any teaching or been involved in any fellowships?
Well, I mentioned the 2 fellowship programs that I directed, and in addition to the teaching at the universities that have employed me, I've done a great deal of lecturing to various professional associations and have put on courses at the annual meetings of professional associations. I've been a guest lecturer at a great many universities and public institutions around this country and a few in other countries.
We don't like this guy.
And have continued to make teaching an active part of my life.
Have you also lectured to the Los Angeles Police Department in any way?
Yes, I have.
In what capacity, or how did that come about?
I presented at a conference on threat assessment and management for the newly formed threat management unit of LAPD.
Doctor, I believe that you have published many books and articles. Is that true?
Well, many articles and a lot of book chapters, a few things that are books.
I have provided, and as the court knows, I provided a copy of a curriculum vitae and an updated one, and the one prior to that, which was outdated. I think Ms. Clark did receive that one as well. Based on your curriculum vitae, Doctor, and just so I can summarize, it seems as though you are responsible for publishing 43 peer-reviewed journals or articles with 3 in press. Is that true?
That sounds about right.
16 academic book chapters, 2
Yes.
books, 2 major reports. And I believe that you've lectured and or participated in over 70 major lectures along those areas that you've described. Is that correct?
Yes.
How many criminal cases have you had the occasion to work on?
I counted up till 1,000 and then stopped counting, and that was 1979.
Predominantly, do you testify for one side or the other?
Well, at different points in my career, the referral of cases has varied. In general, regardless of where the cases were coming from, I've testified, I think, more often in the guilt phase of criminal trials for the government, because more often the government's charges are correct and people are responsible for what they do. But I've evaluated people for both government and defense.
Your Honor, I recognize this man as a jackass, not an expert.
Are there any particularly notable cases which might be known or of interest to the court?
Yes, some that I think might be known are the grand jury investigation of the Tawana Brawley matter in New York, the case in which a Merrill Lynch client returned after the stock market crash and shot his stockbroker and that man's supervisor and then himself. A suit against the Central Intelligence Agency alleging brainwashing experiments conducted in Canada many years earlier. The Chicago Tylenol murders. The case of Coy Phelps, a serial bomber in the San Francisco area. Serial killers Gerald Gallego and Arthur Shawcross.
I'm sorry, what are those 2 names again?
Gerald Gallego and Arthur Shawcross are 2 cases that I was involved in.
Spell those out for the reporter so that you can get the.
Certainly, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Gallego is spelled Gallego, and Arthur Shawcross's last name is Shawcross. The mass murder trials of George Banks and Sylvia Segrist, Seegrist. And I've also been involved in the continuing suit against Eli Lilly, alleging involvement of Prozac in the mass murder committed by Joseph Westbecker in Louisville, Kentucky, and in the schoolyard shootings by Lori Dan around Chicago and Jamie Wilson in South Carolina. I think those are some of the better known cases.
And you've already mentioned your participation for the government in the John Hinckley case.
Well, I never heard of the first guy, but Arthur Shawcross is a pretty, I don't like to use the word famous, well-known serial. No, I'm not. I hope he doesn't come up again. Usually we don't see people more than once. I'm sorry. I didn't think we'd see this guy again. I was shocked when I saw him. I was like, no, we got to see this guy again. No. Sorry, guys. Look at that face. He's so smug. Yeah, and those eyebrows. Yeah. Windbag. Yeah, Judy, you're right. This dude is pretty much in love with himself. You know, achievements don't make you special. It just means that you worked very hard to get where you are. And anybody can do it. Some people just choose not to. I worked very hard to get where I did as a nurse. And I would have gone places if I hadn't gotten sick. Not my fault. I was telling Travis the other day. See, now I'm on my soapbox. I was telling Travis the other day, we were talking about, I don't know if we were talking about a specific celebrity or just celebrities in general. I was like, it ticks me off. Celebrities that are mean to their fans because we're the ones that put them there. We're the reason why they're famous. Yeah. It is. It's exhausting. I went through LPN school and then worked for 9 years and then went back to RN school. Both times I went through school, I had a little mini mental breakdown in the middle and wanted to quit both times, but I didn't. I kept going. And both nursing school, both times, hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Well, except survive cancer. But other than that, hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And so we were talking about celebrities. I'm like, they're celebrities because we made them popular. I said, my job, I kept people alive. I saved lives. My job was a hell of a lot more important than what they're doing. If I ever meet a celebrity and they snub me, I'm going to cuss them out. Nobody is more important than anybody else. It's how you apply yourself. It's what you do with your life. Nobody's more important than anybody else. And I cannot stand people like that. Drives me crazy. Nobody is more important than anybody else. It's just how you apply yourself. And this guy irks me. Okay, I'm off my soapbox.
Yes.
Did you have an occasion to conduct an evaluation on Mr. Robert Bardo, the individual seated to the far right of council?
Yes, I did.
What did that evaluation consist of, Doctor?
Well, the evaluation consisted of the traditional clinical examination, a review of documents, and in particular, I tried to bring to bear in that evaluation the results of a program of research concerning individuals who have pursued others inappropriately.
On that topic, would you please tell the court about your experience in research concerning mentally disordered people who pursue inappropriate relationships?
This is a program of research and interest that began sometime before the Hinckley case. The Hinckley shooting was in 1981, and at that time I'd been interested in a phenomenon in which individuals have the delusion that someone else, a stranger, most often typically of higher status, is in love with the patient. It's a condition that I'd had occasion to see at Bridgewater, the Hospital for the Criminally Insane, and had found fascinating because so often those individuals are functional in every aspect of their lives, but for the delusion that someone else loves them. It was in part that interest, I think, that led to my being asked to be involved in the Hinckley case. Because I was so deeply involved in that case and spent so much of my time on it, and through it came to learn about assassins and those who have attacked public figures, that became an important focus of my later research. The period at which I was able to begin studying that in a larger scale way was when I was awarded a grant from the National Institute of Justice, which is the research branch for the U.S. Department of Justice. And that grant afforded an opportunity to study those who threatened and attacked public figures. we discovered quite early in our research that we would be studying the wrong thing if we were to study threats, because so many of the attacks that had occurred were not preceded by threats, however, did appear to be preceded by inappropriate communications of various kinds. And so early in the project, we turned our attention to studying inappropriate communications from mentally disordered persons to public figures. We had wanted to be able to study the pursuit of not just public figures, but anyone by the mentally disordered. But that was not practical because there was no way to find large enough numbers of cases where materials had been appropriately collected that we could study them. On the other hand, public figures had, we found, attracted so many pursuers that it should be possible by studying those who pursue public figures to see a large number of cases, be able to conduct social science research, and hopefully have something that would generalize to the general population and not merely be about celebrities or other public figures. As we sought places where it would be possible to conduct such a study, which required that there be thousands of cases on file, we found only 2 places where it would be possible for us to do that research. Those 2 were the archives of Gavin DeBecker in Los Angeles, whose company provides security for many public figures, particularly in the entertainment industry, and in the archives of the Capitol Police, located on the Capitol grounds in Washington, who are responsible for collecting such information with respect to members of the United States Congress and the U.S. Senate. Those were the only 2 suitably organized databases available to us, and so we studied first the Los Angeles sample, primarily directed to Hollywood celebrities, then the Capitol Hill sample. The research that we did in Los Angeles involved a team of researchers traveling here. We were at that time from the University of Virginia, and we went through several phases. One was to do case histories. We looked for cases that illustrated important points that were not representative in any quantitative way, and dictated case summaries of on the order of 100 cases of people who had pursued public figures. We also devised a method by which we could generate a random sample of what was then about 4,000 cases in the DeBecker archives, 4,000 individuals who had pursued contact with public figures. And the sampling strategy we used allowed us to study 107 individuals whose pursuit had led to a physical visit to the public figure, which we term an approach, and 107 cases matched for the amount of information we had that had not led to an approach, because our goal at that point had become identifying from letters written to public figures which letter writers would physically approach the object of their attention. The reason that that's an important part is that the harmful interactions primarily occur when the pursuer is in physical proximity to the object of their attention. It's not the only way to harm someone. However, it is the ordinary way. And so we reasoned that if it were possible to predict which individuals would physically approach, it would provide a means by which security personnel monitoring the inappropriate mail received by public figures would be able to focus their attention on those who would approach, and thereby reduce the costs that would otherwise attend to gathering intelligence information about the much larger number of people who do not approach. We found that 10 to 12% of the letter writers whose letters were obviously inappropriate physically approached, and we were able to devise predictive scales that work rather well at predicting which letter writers will physically approach, though they are not perfect.
Doctor, I need to understand this and take some notes. in the Rebecca archives, you selected 4,000 people at random who had in some way contacted or pursued celebrities?
Your Honor, the Rebecca archives had approximately
Oh,
4,000
I see.
subjects on file.
All right.
And we initially studied how many there were, what proportions wrote only, what proportions wrote and called, what proportions visited only, what proportions wrote, called, and visited, etc.
All right, but you mentioned some random sample.
Right. And then what we did
All right, go ahead.
was to devise a sample such that we randomly sampled from all those who visited. So we knew we had a random sample of that, and in fact, it was nearly all who had ever visited that we had in the sample. Then we needed a control group that had not visited, so we could study the difference. The thing that makes it a little complex is that we discovered that the non-visitors very often had sent only one letter or two or three, and that in fact the average number of mailings was significantly lower in the non-visitors.
Well, this 107 people, are those nearly all of the people who did visit?
At that time, there were about 175 thought to have visited, and there was missing information on so many that there were only about 107 left to be studied.
All right, and how large was the control group?
Equal in size.
107?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Had we randomly sampled the controls, all we would have discovered is that the more you know about people, the more likely they are to approach, which would have been an artifact of the finding that approachers write more, because these individuals write so much about their personal lives. The more they write, the more one knows, and therefore we would have found interesting but useless results had we not controlled for the amount of information sent by the letter writers. We didn't know what to look for when we began the project because there hadn't been any quantitative research on such things before. In fact, there hadn't been any academic research about this problem. And so we over-studied to our exhaustion and actually tried to measure as best we could some 2,000 variables concerning each one of the subjects. Some of these were very repetitive, such as coding up to 30 or 40 different characteristics of every threat that we could identify in a letter. And if someone had written 10 threats, we'd be coding those same variables over and over for each threat. To make what's a very long story short, one thing we discovered was that there's some things that can't be measured from letters, and we had to discard certain data that weren't sufficiently reliable to meet scientific standards. A second thing we learned was that many of the things that we had thrown in the pot and tried to examine were not useful for the purpose of predicting approaches, including things that one would think would be. Things that an expert advisory board made up of law enforcement people and people with experience in celebrity protection had contributed ideas to. Many of those things just didn't pan out, including things that are relied on every day to this day for making these predictions. They're simply wrong. So we were able to establish some things that don't work that you might think would, and some things that do work that are counterintuitive. We were able then, knowing something about what was worth studying and what could be studied, to greatly streamline this process when we went to Washington and studied those persons who had sent inappropriate communications to members of the U.S. Congress. And so that was a much shorter form where we looked, I think, at 600 variables. Some of those were not used for predictive purposes, but merely for description, because we were sensitive to the statistical problems that arise if one studies too many variables. Now, that project has led to a number of other spin-off projects and a number of presentations to try to fulfill the need to find out information about ordinary people and not just media figures. We also did a little study in which we sent questionnaires to college and university attorneys, legal offices, to see if they had encountered problems of various kinds of inappropriate pursuit or stalking on their campuses. And we were able through that to determine to some extent that it's a widespread problem and that very similar behaviors occurred among college students. I've always had the habit of asking audiences I lecture to whether they have had this experience, and through that too have found that it is a common experience for someone in an audience to have been pursued. We were able to collect historical information on those who had pursued public figures, and through another project, it became possible to look at the characteristics of those who have in fact attacked and injured public figures. That's a very small number of cases over the years of U.S. history, but we've been able to study those cases in some depth to see the characteristics of those who end up injuring a public figure. This research at various stages has been presented to a number of different audiences. I've spoken about this to the National Center for the Analysis of Violent Crime at the FBI Academy, to the Intelligence Division of the U.S. Secret Service, to the University of California at Irvine, University of Virginia, University of Pennsylvania, the LAPD seminar that I mentioned, conferences for the New York State Police. I've given a course on this for the American Academy of Psychiatry and the Law, have lectured on it to the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. I've given talks at various mental hospitals to their staff about this problem. And there have been 2 conferences that I participated.
I don't know, possibly. Can you hear me? I switched back to the phone. I don't know what that stupid microphone's doing. It turned blue again. I give up. I'm just going to use the microphone on the phone. I don't know. I know we saw him in the Phil Spector case. It's possible he was on the OJ case too. And let me know if there's an echo.
In once by writing a paper someone else read, once by presenting personally on behalf of the Association of Personal Managers, who are managers in the entertainment industry and who have held 2 artists and executive protection seminars. As you might imagine, there's been considerable media interest in this work, and so some of the findings have made their way to the general public through the press. Simultaneous with that work ongoing, I found that I was doing more and more consulting on matters of this kind, and that led me to establish a corporation called the Threat Assessment Group so that I could keep that part of my work different from the rest of my practice. And the Threat Assessment Group, which is principally me and consultants who have experience in this area that I use from time to time, through that, I've had occasion to assess cases for various corporations. Perhaps 30 of the Fortune 500 companies have used my services in that way, because executives from companies receive cases of this type too, and inappropriate pursuit. Universities have used my services. Church leaders, particularly television evangelists, have had problems along these lines. Private citizens and in particular psychiatrists have called for assistance because they, of course, can encounter the same thing. And probably the largest number of cases I do are on behalf of law enforcement agencies, including threats against judges. I've had occasion to testify in 2 cases involving inappropriate pursuit of the judiciary. One was the United States versus...
Did you say appropriate?
Inappropriate, sir. very inappropriate in the case of U.S. v. Moody. Mr. Moody had.
I just misheard you, that's all. Continue.
Mr. Moody is the man convicted now of sending 4 mail bombs, including the one that killed civil rights leader Robert Robinson in Savannah and Judge Robert Vance of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit. He had sent threat letters to every judge on the circuit and to about a dozen TV stations. I also testified against a man in Arkansas, who had been inappropriately pursuing a state court judge whom he thought had special interest in him because of the way she looked at him when he was a juror. Likewise, I've had occasion to work on a number of cases involving the pursuit of celebrities, and of those there are only a few that have been publicly identified as cases on which I've worked. And those, of course, the only ones I'm free to mention, which are Ralph Now, the man who pursued a number of celebrities and on whose case I worked on behalf of Cher and Olivia Newton-John, and the case of Michael Lawrence Shields, who pursued actress Stephanie Zimbalist. That's a case that I worked on behalf of the FBI and testified against Mr. Shields at his sentencing a year ago. And finally, Levon Muhammad, also known as Billie Jean Jackson, is a case in which I've had occasion to prepare an affidavit on behalf of Michael Jackson.
So why are you testifying for the defense in this case? If you've testified, that's my new word. If you've testified for the prosecution in other stalking cases, why are you testifying for the defense in this one? That doesn't seem right to me. Was the defense the highest bidder? Like, what?
Concerning her. The other cases I'm not at liberty to identify.
You mentioned the one participation by yourself in a lecture put on by the Association of Artists, Managers and Protection Seminar. At that seminar, were there representatives from the FBI and the Los Angeles Police Department and also the City Attorney's Office?
Yes, there were.
Now, I may have asked this already, but you did conduct an evaluation on Mr. Robert Bardo, and what did the evaluation consist of?
Well, I spent 2 days interviewing and examining Mr. Bardo in the LA County Jail. I believe it was September 23rd and 24th. And the first of those days, though a court order had been issued to permit videotaping, the jail was unaware of the court order, and I did not have a copy, so I was not permitted to take the videotape equipment in and had to take notes by hand. On the second day, however, it was possible to videotape, and so I videotaped the entire time that I spent with him on day 2. In addition to examining Mr. Bardo directly, I also had occasion to review a number of documents concerning him. And those are the documents represented here, which include, besides my own notes, records from the Sunnyside United School District that include both some ordinary school records and also commentary about his emotional problems at that time. A set of records from the school district that includes many of the writings of Mr. Bardo from early in 1984. A portion, at least, of the records from the Palo Verde Hospital in Tucson, Arizona, where he was hospitalized in 1984. What appears to be the complete file from the Tucson Psychiatric Institute, where he was hospitalized in 1985. The raw data and psychological test results from testing done by a school psychologist in 1984. a set of documents that includes reports from the investigators from the Public Defender's Office and investigators from the Office of the District Attorney that I'll probably have occasion to mention more specifically later rather than to detail all the interviews now. A transcript of the interview conducted by LAPD with Arlene Wydrick, the defendant's sister, a transcript of an interview conducted by the Tucson, Arizona Police Department with Edward Bardo, the defendant's brother, documents that I believe to be the contemporaneous police reports made out in Arizona at the time of his arrest, and at least some of the police reports created by LAPD. I don't know how complete those are. A copy of the autopsy report on Rebecca Schaeffer. Photographs of the vicinity at 120 North Sweetser, including photographs that are obviously crime scene photos from the time of the shooting. Letters written to the Morris Cerullo organization by Mr. Bardo after his arrest. A complete transcript of the preliminary hearing and the testimony of all the witnesses thereat. What I believe to be a more complete set, perhaps totally complete set of the letters to various school authorities, including a teacher and a counselor, written by Mr. Bardo in 1984. Both the tape recording of the interview of Robert Bardo by the Tucson Police Department and also a transcript of that interview, I believe referred to as the confession. Copies of a selection of letters that I do not believe to be complete, of the letters written to Rebecca Schaeffer by Mr. Bardo. And I should add, I don't know the source of all of these. That is how they were eventually provided to me or where they were found. A copy of a letter written by Mr. Bardo to Bono, the lead singer from a group known as U2. Some handwritten notes and sketches of Mr. Bardo, the source of which I don't know. A letter from Mr. Bardo to Arlene Wydrick. And finally, a series of letters written after the shooting that include letters to Mr. Robert Cleaver. I believe a letter to Pam Dauber. A letter to Kevin Thomas. A letter to People magazine. To some of those persons, there was more than one letter. I've also had occasion to view fragments of videotape evidence presented in this trial, which included the testimony of the journalist from Arizona who was present at part of the time of the arrest.
That would be Mr. Jim Weeder, John.
Number one, I'm concerned about why only fragments, and B, did you see the testimony of Mr. Weeder?
I did see the testimony, Your Honor. He's the only witness whose testimony I believe I saw in its entirety.
Well, you were in the courtroom with him?
No, sir.
Oh, on television?
On television and fragments because they interrupt.
Okay.
You were indicating the sources of the information on which you based your evaluation. Was that all of it? Did you detail
There are merely two other things. That is, I've gone back over the videotapes of my own examinations of Mr. Bardo in some detail. I had prepared, or your office had prepared, a partial transcript of that, and I've tried to hand correct some of it, but it doesn't begin to approach a complete or correct transcript. And I have also listened to the Joshua Tree album of U2 that Mr. Bardo came to tell me was very significant. I had listened to that before the examination so that I could interview him about it.
What, based on your evaluation of all the materials, relevant materials, what did you determine to be the psychologically significant periods of time in Mr. Robert Bardo's life?
Well, I think it makes some sense to see it as I believe he sees it in part, as a period when he was prepubescent and without very much of significance, followed by his startling interest in Samantha Smith, which I'll refer to as the Samantha Smith phase, his interest in Rebecca Schaeffer, which of course is the Rebecca Schaeffer phase, what he labeled the post-Rebecca Schaeffer phase. These have been center points in his life, and the one other way one might break it down is to point out that around the time of his interest in Samantha Smith, he also had excessive interest in a teacher named Mrs. Morris, and so it may make sense to think of that as a separate Mrs. Morris phase.
Given that, then, perhaps we could take it down sequentially. Could you tell us then what you found to be significant as far as the first stage or the first phase, which I believe you labeled as prepubescent?
Well, he was born in January 1970 at Edwards Air Force Base, and with his family moved on several occasions. While still a small child, he had open heart surgery for a congenital heart defect. And the first move was in 1974 to the Yokota Air Force Base, where he lived from ages 4 to 8. From ages 8 to 12, after another move, he lived with his family in Louisiana at the England Air Force Base. He had a normal prenatal history as far as I've been able to determine, and his early development seems also to have been normal. The only significant medical problems in his early childhood seem to be a traumatic amputation of the tip of one of his fingers in what he and others assure me was an accident, and from which he still does have a visible scar and defect. And another incident in which he injured his leg in a bicycle accident and required hospitalization. The family moved to Tucson around 1982, and while his sister Arlene has suggested that that was the impetus for some deterioration in him, his father gave another account. His father has indicated that he saw a marked change in Mr. Bardo's behavior when he returned from a visit to his sister's in Florida, where his sister was working as a topless dancer and a bar girl. According to the dad, when Robert returned, he was a changed person. His personality was different. I don't know whether...
Oh my God, what a stellar family this is. Stellar family.
Events in that trip have had some impact or not. I just know that it was around age 12, according to Arlene, or 13, according to his father, that a change occurred. And I also know that by the time he was 13, he was doing some very odd things that begin, to my knowledge, with Samantha Smith.
Your Honor, I do, given the hour, I would like to suggest that we take our noon recess, but before we do that, I have some motions that I would like to make at sidebar with the reporter.
Motions at sidebar with
Yes.
the reporter. All right, we'll take the afternoon recess. Till 1:30, ladies and gentlemen.
Marty, would you want your daughter on stage flashing her tits to a bunch of dirty old men? I know I wouldn't want my stepdaughters up on stage flashing their tits to a bunch of dirty old men. Getting dollar bills stuck in their G-string.
In conducting your evaluation, and also you relayed to us what materials you relied on, that you broke down your evaluation and analysis of Robert Bardo into approximately 5 phases. Is that correct?
That's right.
And I believe when we last left, you had told us about the first phase or stage, the prepubescent phase. I think you concluded with that, did you not? That phase. Would you then tell us on what you determined to be the psychologically significant pieces of evidence as far as the second phase, which I believe you termed the Samantha Smith phase?
A number of changes were noted in Robert's behavior that apparently are difficult for people to date in retrospect, but there's an event that clearly dates the onset, or at least puts the latest limit on when the onset of his change of behavior may have been. And that's an incident in which, in December 1983, he ran away from home using $140 stolen from his mother's purse to pursue a then famous young woman named Samantha Smith. He was 13 years old when he did this, and there are a few factual discrepancies between the various sources that describe the incident, but what all seem to agree on is that he had been interested in, fascinated with Samantha Smith. He had written to her. He had received a reply from her to one of his letters. And when he received a reply from her, of course, that led him to think there was a special relationship, just as has happened with countless other mentally disordered people who receive replies from celebrities. He received the reply handwritten in her hand and wrote to teachers about his interest in her. Actually, he didn't write to them until after he had left. He ran away. He traveled to Maine. He didn't have money to eat on the way, so he was starving. And when he got to Maine, he was encountered by the police. Now, that's one of the places where discrepancies arise. But what Robert told me was that actually, though he's somewhat ashamed to admit it, he went to the police and asked them to give him a ride to the town in which she lived, naively thinking that that was appropriate. The police, encountering this young man from Arizona, contacted Tucson Police Department, which by that time had a missing person report on him, and notified his parents. While he was in Maine, he was placed in a halfway house or some other sort of facility to be held for the transport back to Arizona. And while they're varying accounts of what he did. Some say he stabbed himself in the arm. Some say he cut himself. Some say he tried suicide. I believe what in fact he did was, as he told me, stuck a pen into a vein in his arm with the fantasy that blood would gush out and he could die that way. In other words, it was a very strange kind of suicidal gesture at age 13. He was returned then to Arizona, and once in Arizona, did include this episode with Samantha Smith in his many writings to the school.
Yeah. Did that conclude all of the relevant data that you had considered as far as the second stage or phase?
Except for some things that occur in his later writings that I'll relate when I get there.
Now, before we go on, there appears to be an additional person seated to the right of the district attorney who's not been here on prior occasions. Do you recognize this man? here?
Yes, I do.
Can you identify him?
He is Dennis Crimmins. I don't know if his rank currently is detective or not, but I know him.
And where do you know him from?
I know him from when he was a police fellow at the FBI Academy in Quantico, and he attended, I think, the entire seminar of my course on psychiatry and criminal law. We had contact together at the academy there, and he is a first-rate investigator. He's with LAPD, robbery homicide.
Thank you. What did you determine to be the psychological significant pieces of evidence or data concerning what we will now call the Miss Morris phase or stage? Or would that be the next stage in your evaluation?
Yes, well, by January 84, perhaps earlier, but I don't have evidence for it, but by January of 84, Robert Bardo had become particularly interested in and had observed to be awed by a teacher in a special class he was in for gifted students, that teacher being Mrs. Morris. The class was known as the search class. And he was referred to Mr. Hickman, a counselor at the school, by Mrs. Morris. He then began to write regularly to Mr. Hickman and also to Mrs. Morris. There are some writings that I'm not sure were addressed to Mr. Hickman or Mrs. Morris. I don't know to whom they were addressed. But there's a period of time beginning in January of 84 and extending throughout the first half of that year in which he wrote voluminously and bared his soul to these teachers. One of the themes of those letters is that he had a tremendous attraction to Mrs. Morris and saw her as a friend, as someone special, as the only one who had been nice to him, as someone who had a very special relationship with him. He was noted to have been exceeding the usual bounds of student-teacher propriety in doing such things as suggesting how she should wear her hair or asking her for her home telephone number, which was among the things that caused concern to Mrs. Morris. The relationship, as he perceived it with her, however, changed. And the central event that seemed to change his perception of what he was to Mrs. Morris and what she was to him was an incident in which Mrs. Morris made what he took as an unkind comment about his brother, Jeffrey Bardo. Jeffrey Bardo, who is also a sick young man, had apparently been described by Mrs. Morris as looking retarded, or words to that effect. And that prompted the defendant to write repeatedly that he was gravely concerned that she might think ill of him, that he was worried that she might talk about him behind his back too, that she might have an unkind thought toward him, that she might not think of him as he wished her to, all of which led him to conclude that she had to die, that he must kill her, that he had to kill someone, he had to kill himself, or he had to kill her, and many people had to die because she might think ill of him. And that theme is very dramatic in his writings. Now, it was during that period of time when he had these strong sentiments, when he had these strong sentiments toward Mrs. Morris, that it came to the attention of the school authorities that this was something more than could be handled in the usual counseling way. And he was taken in February of 1984 for hospitalization at Palo Verde Hospital. The documentation from that period in early 1984 indicates that Robert, had been threatening a student. He had compared himself to John Hinckley. He had told his counselor, Mr. Hickman, that he had compulsions to kill someone. He began writing to Mr. Hickman at Mr. Hickman's suggestion as a means of expressing himself. And that's the source of much of the writing I alluded to. During this time, the school contacted his parents, who denied that there was any problem. They spoke both to Mr. Bardo and Mrs. Bardo, and both denied that there were problems. And they insisted that the school stop meeting with Robert and stop counseling him. His behavior at school was described as erratic, including episodes of becoming angry at students, at teachers, in general, without any particular direction. There were times when he was said to yell and to moan. And Mr. Hickman concluded that Robert was accurate when he said that his family ignored him, and he compared himself to the family cat, which they fed but ignored. Still, he admired Mrs. Morris, and this was described at the time as almost an infatuation. And that became one of the main themes in his writings. Now, his writings show an extreme vacillation in his emotional state. And though he was predominantly depressed and feeling miserable, a kind of misery that we would talk about as dysphoric, that is intolerably unpleasant emotions, he wasn't uniformly that way, because intermixed with his writings about feeling overwhelming anxiety and depression and suicidal and terrible, he would also have periods where he would describe himself as feeling normal. I feel better, I feel okay. Sometimes prompted by so little a change as getting a new cassette tape by a rock group that he liked. And yet he would revert quickly to the other state of feeling miserable and depressed and dysphoric. Again, there were times when he would go on the upswing and he would feel elated and that he was going to become famous and that he'd be a great musician and nothing was wrong and everything he thought before wasn't so, but really the world was great. Many people are familiar with these kinds of extreme mood swings in another condition known as manic depressive illness. And I hasten to point out that that's not what I believe this to be. In that condition, the swings often take place over prolonged periods of time, and there are associated features that he did not show. Instead, here the mood swings are occurring very quickly. And in the course of a single day, he can have swings up, swings down, and in between, with more than one peak. The only times that it's possible to study that in any detail are for a brief period in February, and then again for a brief period in March and April, because they're the only times when enough letters are preserved to be able to actually graphically plot out his mood states. In these voluminous writings, he describes a wide range of powerful emotions that include great rage, sadness, loneliness, anxiety, despair. He often wrote about feeling suicidal and homicidal. He wrote about experiences he was having and didn't understand, such as being unable to sleep or sleeping too much, being unable to concentrate, being distracted by the noise, finding it intolerable that the baby was crying or neighbors were loud. He complained of feeling worthless, feeling ugly, feeling stupid, feeling poor, envying others. And yet at other times, he would describe himself as being very happy and deny that he had those other feelings. There are some documents from other people that shed some insight into what was really going on in his life. The school nurse happened to make a note that he'd been referred for glasses when he was in 6th and 7th grades, but the parents never responded to their referral notes. In the midst of all this, in February '84, the school had him tested by their psychologist, Joanne Weber, who did a complete battery of psychological tests. Primarily, the school was worried because of all of these suicide and homicide threats. And they sent home, as part of the evaluation, a form that he was to complete, or rather that his mother was to complete, a history form where the parent is to fill out observations about the child. But he filled it out himself, and in a way that is consistent with everything else we know about him from the records. And he put this comment in that. He wrote, this following comment is from Robert Bardo. Help. This house is hell. I'm going to run away again. I can't handle it anymore. Please help fast. Living in my house is like living in hell, which was a common theme in the writings.
Since we've gotten to that portion of the writings, Your Honor, there was reference made by Mr. Hickman. I'm now going to pass it, we mark as Defense Exhibit D, the entire contents of those writings that we spoke about yesterday.
That's the writings that Mr. Hickman had available to him when he testified.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Did the writings given to
Maybe
him by
Mark
the
Peoples
defendant?
D. Pardon?
The writings given to him by the defendant?
Yeah, that's what I understand.
Exactly.
Those writings given to him by the defendant that were solicited by Mr. Hickman?
That was my understanding of the testimony.
Sure.
Okay.
Fine. Just want to identify. Peoples D.
Defense D, Your Honor.
Defense D. How many writings are there?
There are numerous. I did not mark them down numerically, but they're
Is there
here.
some
in
way
a
to
binder.
keep them all together so that we don't have anything lost?
I placed them in a binder.
All right.
You had just spoken, Dr. Dietz, about some information from the records penned by Joanne Weber. Would you please go on as far as your analysis and evaluation into that type of material?
Yes, Ms. Weber described him at that time as being anxious and tense, uncomfortable, that he was holding his head down and making poor eye contact. And she, like many who've seen him over the years, described as constantly picking at his lips, which he told me had started long ago and which has been observed for at least 8 years. The testing that she did showed that he had an above average IQ, which is consistent with his first-rate school performance during the time he stayed in school, and which, of course, contrasts rather markedly with the level of functioning that he eventually achieved. And I'll speak more to that. He had, in the testing, done some drawings, which is a technique that is used for some standardized psychological tests. And the interpretations that Ms. Weber gave of his drawings were, at least as viewed in retrospect, unusually on the mark, in that she said that they showed he had an obsessive compulsive need to structure the environment, that he had aggressive hostile feelings involving family interrelationships, yet hypersensitivity regarding an over-concern for the home and family situation, feelings of hopelessness and inadequacy, the struggle to maintain contact with and control of the environment and his ego, anxiety, possible hysteria, and possible schizoid tendencies, which is an awful lot to be able to learn from drawings and is rather accurate about Robert Bardo. He likened his home life at the time to that of people under Soviet.
May I interrupt? I'm sorry, doctor. I'm curious to know what report the doctor is referring to.
I'm referring here to the psychological evaluation by Joanne Weber, dated February 17, 1984.
May I be permitted to see it?
Of course.
I'm looking at my notes, which you were provided, and the report is here. It's in the Sunnyside School District records, I think you'll find. Here are her raw data. That's the raw data. And here's the report.
Now, some of these I have not seen. The report the doctor just referred to me, I have seen. The raw notes I have not. Is it possible that I could get these copied?
I'm going to make an order that the prosecutor be given every document that the psychiatrist intends to refer to during his direct testimony in advance of any referral to that document.
I might indicate, Your Honor, most of this information comes from discovery that was provided by the prosecutor, and the discovery information provided the lead that we used to get the information from Sunnyside. That's where we learned of it, from the district attorney's
Well,
discovery.
I'm not going to disentangle any of the privileges that exist in Arizona, nor any that exist here. As you know, there's a psychotherapist patient privilege that exists until a defendant's mental state is put in issue. The defendant's mental state has not been put in issue that long ago. There's been no plea of not guilty by reason of insanity in this case. This is a absence of mental state defense, I take it. And that defense needn't be put in issue until the first witness on the issue hits the stand, and the first one that I recall was yesterday, Mr. Hickman. So the fact that she might have gotten them is irrelevant. The hospitals would quite properly rest on their privilege.
Well, that is in fact the case, and while I was able to obtain some of the school records, I was unable to obtain any of the psychiatric records.
The point is, it will expedite the trial, because if the prosecutor needs anything, any time to assimilate all this material in order to properly cross-examine the witness or prepare for rebuttal, she will get it, just as you got all the time you needed to, including 2 court orders, to have the videotape of the interview by Dr. Dietz done.
I think the record is clear that I've always stated that she is entirely...
I'm not criticizing you, I'm making my position clear.
And I also would like it to be known, since you talked about all of the time that was needed, just so the record's clear, it was only until this court allowed me and signed my order requesting the appointment of Dr. Dietz and others that I was even able to begin that aspect of the defense. Even though the case had been over 2 years old, the court, Superior Court in this courthouse, refused to allow me any money to consult. So just so the record's in perspective
I have
here.
no knowledge of that, Mr. Galindo. The point is that this court has cooperated with both sides and will continue to cooperate with both sides.
And I thank the court for that cooperation, Your Honor. Dr. Dietz, I believe you had indicated that you had relied on some information from Joanne Weber. Could you please continue?
I don't know if I can make the distinction that I believe the court has asked me to make between what the district attorney had and didn't have, because I don't know what she had.
Well, does the court want to take...
Indicate, not to worry about
What I'm
that.
saying is that I want everything that the doctor refers to during your examination to be made available to the prosecution.
Absolutely.
All right, but not after. I think she has a right to follow along.
Well, then perhaps what we should do is this. She has been given a complete report by Dr. Dietz. I handed it to her personally over the noon hour at 37 pages, also his raw notes. If you want to take a 10-minute recess, I'll run up personally and Xerox anything it is that she doesn't have off of these notes. There's nothing in the notes that she was given during the noon hour that is not contained.
Well, Mr. Galindo, during the noon hour, in the middle of testimony, is late. Now, you may have gotten the report late. Again, I intend no criticism, but do not expect someone to absorb a 37-page report from a witness they've never talked to over the noon hour.
I didn't offer that information indicating that I expected her to absorb it, merely that
Correct.
the pieces of information relied upon were there. And that is not 37 pages. It's a list.
Are you asking for a recess or not, Ms. Clark?
No, Your Honor, let me just simply ask this. The
That's
witness
settled.
refers in synopsis form to some records in his report. What I need to know is to see the reports in toto.
Okay, Terry, thank you so much for the update. I've been praying for her. I'm glad everything went well. Tell her she's in my thoughts and prayers. Hope everything continues to go well.
And see what he pulled out and what he did not. And all I would ask is that the witness indicate a list of things he did use so that I can see from that list what I don't have.
So what you want to know is what he used in order to make his opinion? That's
Yes, what he refers
been
to.
gone into largely. Is there more material that we need to go into?
I believe Dr. Dietz listed everything he relied on.
But there may be
Things are
a document that he referred to as a whole and may have referred only to parts of it. I don't know. Let's find out.
Are there any further documents that you intend to refer to in your testimony, Doctor?
Nothing that I haven't already mentioned, and I've given the citations in what's being referred to as a report, this set of notes, that try to specify what documents the information came from.
We'll just have to keep going if something else comes up.
So,
Would you continue then, Doctor?
yes.
I was saying that he likened life in his home to life under Soviet rule, according to the psychologist who tested him. He had talked about viewing himself as evil, viewing himself as less intelligent than other classmates, and expressed what Ms. Weber thought might be a paranoid concern over the opinion held of him by another teacher, who would be Mrs. Morris. In answering a test known as the Bloom Sentence Completion Survey that is in the raw test data just given to the district attorney, he filled out partial sentences indicating that his mother and father have frequent arguments, that there are times he wishes he were dead, that his family causes him pain and suffering. Yet, on the very same document, he said that he likes to play the guitar and hopes in the future to be in the world of the successful and to be, quote, a movie star, writer, or musician, maybe all of them, end quote. He also wrote that when he listens to the radio, he is possessed by it. Ms. Weber noted that Mr. Hickman, the counselor and dean of students, had recommended journal writing to him, and she noted the homicidal and suicidal intentions that he described in that journal. He had alluded to physical violence in the home and expressed concern of what would happen if his parents learned of the disclosures that he'd made to Mr. Hickman. Ms. Weber recommended that he be classified for educational purposes as emotionally handicapped, and she recommended residential treatment for him. It was at that time, that day or the next, that he was hospitalized on an emergency basis in response to the threats that he'd made and his pleas to Mr. Hickman for immediate relief. And that was his first hospitalization beginning February 15, 1984 at Palo Verde Hospital in Tucson, and he remained there for a week. His father and the school counselor had brought him to urgent care, and there is no mention in the records from that time that he had attempted suicide then. However, a later hospital record makes it sound as though he had taken a small overdose of aspirin back then. I don't know if that's so or not. He felt anxious when he was at the hospital. He had difficulty concentrating. He was bothered by noises. He had obsessive thoughts about hurting people. And the psychiatrist responsible for his care at the time, Dr. Meyer, wrote, quote, at times he was having some auditory hallucinations, meaning hearing voices, with the obsessive thinking, end quote. Robert said at that time that he'd always had this problem, and he blamed his mother for it, for not caring or paying attention to him. He complained about his older brother picking on him and telling him that he was dumb. He was described by staff at the hospital as being shy, with poor social skills, poor relations with his peers.
Pardon me, doctor, when you said that he'd always had this problem, what were you referring to?
The hallucinations, Your Honor.
The auditory hallucinations?
Yes, that's what he said to staff, or rather, that's what Dr. Meyer recorded he had said at that time.
And he said he'd always had them and he blamed the mother?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
May I ask what report the doctor is referring to in which Dr. Meyer said that Robert claimed to have always had those hallucinations?
Page 2 of the only report by Dr. Meyer. Page 2 of the only report by Dr. Meyer, the Palo Verde Hospital discharge summary, where it says he had obsessive thoughts about hurting people. At times he was having some auditory hallucinations with the obsessive thinking. The patient stated he had had this problem all his life, and he blames his mother because she doesn't care or pay attention to him.
Thank you, doctor.
And for the record, I believe that report was available and has been available to the district attorney.
I just needed to identify what he was referring to.
So I understand that. I just wanted to make that point.
I will allow limited interruption to find out what he's referring to as to any documents you don't have. But as to any documents you have, I would ask you to refrain from interrupting.
Thank you.
Let's proceed.
Did you continue, Dr. Dietz?
When examined by Dr. Meyer, Mr. Bardo was said to have some facial asymmetry, rapid and pressured speech, which means that he spoke not only quickly, but as though compelled to push the words out, and that there was an obsessive quality to his speech. Dr. Meyer expressed the impression that Mrs. Bardo needed Robert to be the way he is because it supports her own defense against her own emotional difficulties. He was responding in part to the fact that Mrs. Bardo pulled him out of the hospital against medical advice. She was told that her son needed help. He needed to stay in the hospital. He needed to be treated. She said, "There's nothing wrong with my son," and took him away, signing papers that she knew this was against medical advice to remove him. He was treated briefly during this 1-week hospitalization with an antipsychotic medication known as Navane, Navane. That is a medication in the class known as neuroleptics that is used for psychotic mental illnesses to treat what are called the positive symptoms. In psychotic illness, particularly in the illness known as schizophrenia, there are negative symptoms such as social withdrawal, not having friends, seeming odd, not making eye contact, strange ideas, being unable to function in life at the level one's intellect should allow. And those are not helped by such medication, it is believed. Whereas positive symptoms, namely hallucinations, hearing voices, or delusions, having remarkably strange ideas that are fixed in place and that don't comport with reality, often remits with medication. So the medication he was given would be designed ordinarily to remove the positive symptoms such as the hallucinations and perhaps to have a calming effect because he was also very anxious. And it was observed that medication did help reduce his anxiety, but it wasn't possible to give him medication when he left because of the administrative nature of the discharge, it being against medical advice. Dr. Meyer was then asked to write a letter to the school about what had happened, and in a letter dated February 27, 1984, found within the school records, he wrote to Carol Roos of Special Education Services that the evaluation of Robert was just beginning when the parents, at the insistence of the mother, removed him from the hospital, that even though they hadn't completed the evaluation, he had noted that Robert had a great deal of internal conflict, a large amount of unresolved anger, and very poor self-esteem, that he had poor peer relationships and feels very isolated socially. And Dr. Meyer indicated that he couldn't at that time make any prediction about Robert's danger to himself or others. He recommended that Robert be removed from the home, or at least involved in a special program for the emotionally handicapped, and that he receive continuing psychotherapy. Later, Dr. Meyer was to say, when interviewed in the course of this investigation, that he wanted to continue working with Robert, but the parents simply wouldn't accept that he was mentally ill. Mr. Bardo, Robert's father, confirmed that his wife didn't believe that Robert needed any psychiatric treatment at that time and that she'd interfered with his treatment. Although even his recollection was that Palo Verde Hospital didn't really find any real problem with Robert.
Now, Judy, did you really expect this man to be brief? You've heard him before. You should have known better.
After his discharge from that hospital, he continued to write, and there are letters available that permit looking at these fluctuations in his mood state from February 25th of 1984 up through April 16 of 1984. And primarily his mood state was dysphoric, down, depressed, miserable, unhappy.
Reporter, please, dysphoric.
D-Y-S-P-H-O-R-I-C. Yet there were times, again, that he would have normal mood or be feeling elated and happy. All of what was known at that time to the school was summarized by in a report prepared around March of 1984 with Mr. Hickman's input and Carol Ruse as well. And it summarized the Samantha Smith episode, the writings, the concern with Mrs. Morris, his having compared himself to John Hinckley, the threats to the classmate, the things that led to the hospitalization, and the parents' uncooperativeness. I believe the first time that Robert revealed what was happening to distress him so about his brother Ed, or at least part of what was distressing him so, was in March of 1984. In a March 15th letter, he described his brother abusing him, though he had earlier only alluded to that vaguely. He indicated here that his brother controlled his access to other people and communications, that his brother would monitor his telephone calls, his brother Ed would read what Robert wrote, that Robert was forced by Ed to shoplift those things that Ed wanted. Ed would teach both Jeff and Robert how to shoplift and direct the boys as to what he wanted them to steal for him. If they did a good job, they'd be praised. If they did a bad job, they would be punished. The punishment Robert received was being struck repeatedly with a ruler. He wrote that he was struck thousands of times with the sharp edge of a ruler, though when I asked him if that was hyperbole, he said it was really just hundreds of times per transgression for not shoplifting enough or for getting caught. And he wrote that Ed called him humiliating names, beat him daily, forced him to surrender his possessions, forced him to act as Ed's slave, forced him to stay up at night to massage Ed in bed. He wrote, "Not the gay way, just like a massage parlor way," end quote, and to do gross things such as drinking urine. When I later asked him about this period and Ed's punishing him with the ruler, he volunteered spontaneously, "I was never sexually abused," though I hadn't asked him about that. And when I then pursued that possibility, he denied that Ed had sexually abused him or forced him to touch Ed's genitals. So he has not said that.
Wait, who's Ed? Is that his brother?
That occurred. The superintendent of schools wrote on April 3rd of 1984 to the parents, telling them that the school board had met and had agreed that it would pay for tuition and transportation for Robert to go to the Desert Hills School, and pointed out that the family had refused homebound services, which had been made available, and that if the family would not let the hospital turn over the file to Desert Hills, the school board was prepared to go to the county attorney and force them to do that. Around that same time, in April of 1984, a social worker from Desert Hills, Guy Heidinger, Heidinger, wrote to Carol Ruse at the school saying that Robert wouldn't be admitted to Desert Hill School because he was too dangerous to go to their day program for the emotionally handicapped, that they didn't feel that it would work because he was in a home with a sabotaging mother and he was getting a criminal orientation from his older brother Ed, that it was clear that he was a danger to himself and others. And finally, that waiting for this time bomb to explode because he has not acted on all his fantasies would not be a prudent move. He is crying out for help and is capable of escalating his behaviors until someone listens to him. This is when he was 14 years old. Then a counselor at the junior high school that he attended, named Sharon McKay, recalled that he had caused the secretaries at the high school alarm. They were afraid to deal with him and called a counselor to intervene, when it turned out that all he wanted was a pencil and paper so that he could write to Mr. Hickman. But his behavior at that time was that peculiar. Teachers described him as, at lunchtime, standing on the sidewalk doing nothing. Teachers wrote that he interacted with no one except the teacher. He never talked to the other students. Teachers wrote that he had no friends, had no relationships with his peers. They wrote of his difficulty expressing himself orally, yet his ability to express himself very well in writing and to even write beautifully for papers he needed to do for class requirements.
Take a breath, dude. Jeez. Okay, we gotta stop there. We're at 40 minutes and 44 seconds. On which part? Dr. Deets Part 2. Ugh. Belle Marie, knock it off. She's driving me crazy, y'all. I fed her that Pet Fresh, which is like, it looks like real food. Like, it's got sausage and eggs and cheese and rice and carrots. It's like real food. And she gained the weight back that she lost when she was really sick. So now we went back to regular dog food. And she's pitching a fit because she wants her special food. She's going to drive me nuts. She's spoiled rotten. Okay, now we're going to go to the Brian Walsh. Dang it, I need to start taking notes when I watch Peter Tragos. Okay, I'll think about it. I'll remember what I want to tell y'all when we get over there. I'll try to remember. Okay. So, I don't remember if I set it to redirect. Not that it's going to work for most y'all anyway, but I try. But I don't remember. I got chemo brain. Chemo brain's a real thing. Y'all love me anyway, though. So, I'll see you over there in a minute.